Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 6. Etavan Sankhya Yogabhyam Spadharma Parinishtaya Janmalabha Parapumsam Ante Narayana Smiti Etavan, all these, Sankhya, complete knowledge of matter and spirit. Yogabhyam, knowledge of mystic power. Swadharma, particular occupational duty. Parinishtaya, by full perception. Janma, birth. Labha, gain. Para, the supreme. Pumsam, of a person. Ante, at the end. Narayana, the personality of Godhead. Smriti, remembrance. Translation. The highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. Translation, please repeat. The highest perfection of human life. The highest perfection of human life. Achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. Purport. Narayana is the transcendental personality of Godhead beyond the material creation. Everything that is created, sustained, and at the end annihilated, is within the compass of the Mahatattva, material principle, and is known as the material world. The existence of Narayana, or the personality of Godhead, is not within the jurisdiction of the Mahatattva. And as such, the name, form, attributes, etc. of Narayana are beyond the jurisdiction of the material world. By the speculation of empiric philosophy, which discerns matter from spirit, or by cultivation of mystic powers, which ultimately helps the performer to reach any planet of the universe or beyond the universe, or by discharge of religious duties, one can achieve the highest perfection, provided one is able to reach the stage of Narayana Smriti, or constant remembrance of the personality of Godhead. This is possible only by the association of a pure devotee who can give a finishing touch to the transcendental activities of all jnanis, yogis, or karmis, in terms of prescribed duties defined in the scriptures. There are many historical instances of the achievement of spiritual perfection, such as that of Sanakadi rishis, or the 9 celebrated Yogendras, who attained perfection only after being situated in the devotional service of the Lord. None of the devotees of the Lord ever deviated from the path of devotional service by taking to other methods as adopted by the jnanis or yogis. Everyone is anxious to achieve the highest perfection of his particular activity, and it is indicated herein that such perfection is Narayana Smriti, for which everyone must endeavor his best. In other words, life should be molded in such a manner that one is able to progressively remember the personality of Godhead in every step of life. Etavan sanka yoga vyam spadharma paninishtaya janmalabha para pumsam ante narayana smriti. The highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty is to remember the personality of God at the end of life. So Sukadeva Goswami, continuing to speak, and he very specifically replies to the inquiry of Maharaj Parikshit about what should one do when one is approaching death. Now, here Srila Prabhupada elaborates in his purport that at the end of the purport he says that everyone is anxious to achieve the highest perfection of his particular activity. This endeavor to become perfect or improve is innate within all of us, because now we're separated from our original condition of Anandamaya Vyasat, always in Ananda, always blissful, always in connection with the Supreme Personality. We're trying to come again to that position, just like water. That's our constitutional situation, and it's like water. Its constitutional position is liquidity. Liquidity. Now you can freeze water, you can heat it, becomes steam, or you can freeze it, becomes ice. But it always wants to go back to the liquid. If you leave ice out, steam will become water again, or it condenses and so on. So it always wants to go back, and we're always trying to improve ourselves, get to improve the quality. We want things perfect. We want pure, just like you live in the country, or you want to get some juice. Generally people like more pure juice, or more. Of course, if you live in India, they may not. I noticed one time in India when I was driving from Delhi to Vrindavan, there was a big billboard that advertised the juice and orange juice and fruity, I think it was, and that said pure chemicals, made with pure chemicals. And so I made a mental note. I don't know about this fruity. I remember getting served fruity on quite a few occasions. And it's made with the pure chemicals. They're proud of it. But everyone just innately, intrinsically, we want, a pure, higher quality. That's, of course, someone really deep in the mode of ignorance just doesn't care about anything anymore. That's another thing. And that's really a suppression by the mode of ignorance that you're giving. And that's one of the symptoms of the mode of ignorance. You just don't care about anything. Those around you, your own self, your own body, you don't care. That's really a sad situation, and very much symptomatic of the tamaguna. But even in passion, especially in goodness, we want to improve. So, and Prabhupada mentions it here. Everyone is anxious to achieve the highest perfection of his particular activity. But of course, in our material endeavors, everything's changing, and this is what is mentioned here. Everything is created, sustained, at the end annihilated. It's within the compass of the Mahatattva, material elements. And material elements it's always in flux. What was achievable, last year, it's not that same. If you adapt that same method, it's not going to work this year for some reason or other. Things have changed around. The influence of time, the influence of the modes of nature, your consciousness is affected, even your consciousnesses, and other people. Even sometimes, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that actually the living entity in the material world, if it's identifying with the material world, can never really live for the now, because it's thinking about the past and thinking about the future. You think about, we had a really good time back then, and then in the future we're making plans to do this and the other. Living in the moment is just all relative to the past and the future, but that's always changing. Sometimes we think about the past. I remember the time when we all went there, or sometimes you're separated. I wish I could be back with my friends and we can do those things we used to do. But quite often, if you try to relive that, it won't be the same. It can't be the same. This was actually, I remember reading, this was a comment by Lord Balaram in the Sabha, in the Dwarka, when that someone had come and the impending Kurukshetra war was coming up, and Lord Balaram wanted to have a peaceful situation. He commented when someone said, well, maybe we can just revert to how things were before, and he said, that can never be, because of the effect, and he said actually because of the effect of Kala, time. Time changes everything. They will be different because their thinking and mentality will have changed from when it was then, due to so many factors. I said the place will be where all these things were before. That's changed. You will be different. You were thinking in one way before, but now you're slightly changed, and now you're thinking in... So if we try to hold on to things in the past, in this material world, it can never be the same. It's always changing. There's that pressure by many factors. Mahatattva, the elements of the Mahatattva, very extensive subject matter, Mahatattva. Material nature, all the elements of it, all these factors are constantly in flux. Time is there, modes are there, your consciousness is there, their consciousness is there. As I remember one devotee told me that he left Krishna consciousness for being a devotee for a long time, and he went and he thought, well, maybe I'll go and see all my old friends, get back and sort of relive how I used to live in the past. Get there. And he looked up one friend. They were like 20 years before, and so he found out where that friend was, and he went there, he knocked on the door. Hi, I'm so-and-so. And the old friend said, yeah, what do you want? What are you doing here? After 20 years, as if we could take up exactly where we left off. He said, everything's changed. It's different. He was like kind of shocked. It shocked him back into reality. It can never be. You can't go back there. Or even if you try, sometimes you get together, but it's just what did one devotee call it? He says these are like snapshots. We remember certain things in the past. We had a good time here, we had a bad time there, whatever it was. They're like snapshots, so they can never, you hold on to them, but things have moved on now. So unfortunately, because people don't have this higher understanding of spirituality, or most people, or if they have they don't know it very well. And so they hang on to all these things desperately, and these verses, these verses, all these things are, like imperfect, fallible, just like it's mentioned by Sukadeva. Fallible soul, we hang on, whether it's our mother or father. Okay, we have to live our life, we have to have a good relationship, but if we're desperately clinging on to all this, not knowing that all is, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. You can work hard, you can get a big house, but when there's death, you can't take your house with you, you can't take anything with you. It is said that you're born in the world with nothing, and you will leave the world with nothing. So all in between is just a phantasmagoria, really. So devotees see it like that, although they also understand that whilst living in the world, we have to live appropriately and nicely and do our best. Here Prabhupada also mentions that one has to do their best. Of course, he mentions it in connection to Narayana Shmiti. But one has to do their best Kamanyavadikarasta ma paleshu karata ma kama palhit mati sangaspakamani. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you have a right to do your work, but don't be attached to the result. Don't be attached to the result, because this is the devotee. This is how devotee thinks. Yes, he said, work to the best of our ability, doing our spadharma or whatever other path we're following. But don't be attached, because the results, they're like fleeting. And leave the result to Krishna. You do your duty, and whatever comes, that is by God's grace. This is how the mentality. So devotees understand that. They understand that it's all temporary, all moving around. You can't really grab and hold on to anything. You may want to, but you can't really grab and hold on to it. It just slips from different reasons. Adi daivik, adi bautik, adi atmik. All sorts of problems come. You build a fantastic house. I just was reading a couple of weeks ago, there was a big storm up in Brisbane, and there was this picture. I was looking at the ABC Internet News, and there was this picture of this man scratching his head. There was a big tree branch right through the middle of his house. But the storm came, and the tree came. He said, "Gee, luckily I was out walking the dog." The tree came right in the middle of his house. It all kind of wrecked his whole house. So on and so forth. So any moment, anything can happen. And so these are unfortunate consequences of living in the material world. So therefore, one has to try to understand what is beyond all this. What is beyond all this? And this is what Sukadeva Goswami is explaining to Maharaj Parikshit. Well, I've seen all these things around, and I saw my father, my grandfather, my grandmother. They all lived their life and they passed away. And I will also go the same way. But is there anything beyond that? Is there something more? And here it is explained that yes, the existence of Narayana, or the personality of God, it is beyond. And actually our existence is beyond. It's not part of this whole Mahatattva thing. This is our illusion. Although it is a reality, being an energy of the Lord, and we are living in it, but ultimately it is illusory, it has a beginning, middle and end, and we don't have a beginning, middle and end, neither ourselves nor the personality of Godhead. Now it is the personality of Godhead from whom all these things are manifest. Everything emanates from Him, the spiritual and material. He is the fountainhead of all. So this is something that one can come to the conclusion in this way by following different types of different paths. Just like here it is mentioned, the empiric philosophers, the jnanis, or the yogis. The examples are given here of the Kumaras and the Yogendras. Yogendra, the word Yogendra, yoga, Endra means senses. Master of the, someone who's mastered the senses through the yoga. Mastered the senses. In the yoga, there's all the pranayama and all these asana, pranayama, all this. But ultimately, one is meant to go up and control the senses, control the mind, and go into the meditation. So one who is a master. So the Yogendras, they are masters. And now the Yogendras, it is mentioned, they were 9 sons of Lord Rishabhdev. Lord Rishabhdev. He said, of course, those who are devotees, have been devotees for some time, will know the story of Lord Rishabhdev and his 100 sons. And the eldest being Bharat Maharaj. And Bharat Maharaj, everyone knows the story of the 3 lives of Bharat Maharaj. Now he had another 9 sons who became the rulers of the different varshas of the earth. They became rulers. It is mentioned that another 81 sons, they became like Brahmana, Chakshu, Shastra Chakshu. They were not very knowledgeable of the Shastras and Brahmanas and teachers. Another, what did I say? 81, and the last 9, they became masters of the yoga. They were the Yogendras, very famous personalities, and and by the practice of the yoga, they ultimately came to the realization of that actually it is they obtained the perfection. Now in the higher planetary systems, just like the Kumaras, it is said that all those residents, especially above the Svargaloka, you have earth, and then you have lower planetary, Atala, Srutala, Talatala, then you know, all the lower planetary, 7 lower planetary, and then you have earth, and then you have higher planetary system, Om Bu Bu Va. Bu is the earth, Bhuva, in the intermediate, Svargaloka, heavens, and then above the heavens there is Mahaloka, and then Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka, the 7 realms. So the Kumaras, that is said that they live on the Janaloka. And all those residents of the higher realms, they have all the cities. It just comes natural. Just like we have qualities that are natural living on earth. They have all the cities, Anima, Lagima, Prapti, and Mahima, all, lighter than the lighter, smaller. They can change their shape. They can get anything from anywhere just by their power. All these different powers, and all of them, they can travel just freely anywhere without the use of any other means. They just go. They just go. So the Kumaras and the Yogendras, although they were the sons of living on earth, still they'd attained that level. And they had come to the position of great devotees. And the Kumaras, of course, we know that the 4 Kumaras, they were the firstborn mental sons of Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma asked them to help populate the universe. They didn't want to do it. They were situated in Brahman consciousness. And they said, we will just remain as we are. We won't go into the household of life. We will remain brahmacharis. And they practiced tapasya. They also practiced the yoga. They practiced tapasya. They also had the siddhis. They had all these different qualities. And they are living now on the Mahaloka. And they're very famous. They instructed even Narad Muni. They're the head of one of our Vaishnava Sampradayas, Kumara Sampradaya. The whole story of a Nimbakacharya is a very famous acharya, how they instructed Nimbaka. And actually how they were initiated. They, of course, we know the story how they, by their perfection, they were able to go to the Vaikuntha. And they wanted to see Lord Vishnu. And so when they were stopped, of course, by Jai Vijay, but when Lord Vishnu came, they were so enamored by him, they were just overwhelmed. Even the smell of the tulsi that was offered on the lotus feet of the Lord just overwhelmed them. That the scent, the sight, the sound of the Lord coming with his whole retinue, there was a whole description there. So they were so attracted, they became very attracted. It is said also, one time they went to Lord Brahma and asked some questions to him about renunciation and detachment from worldly things. And there was one specific question that Lord Brahma thought, he thought that, here's a very complex question, I will pray to the Lord to please appear to answer this question. So it is said that the Lord appeared as Lord Hamsa in the swan form and explained this, answered this question of the Kumaras. And he gave them the Gopala mantra. They were initiated them with the Gopala mantra. So they were very great. They were, Brahmandis. They were engaged in meditation on Brahman, but then they became devotees by the association of the Supreme Personality and by the association of the devotees. Now this is very, very important because now it is said that the Kumara Sampradaya, all the Sampradayas, all those great acharyas, they attained perfection. All those who come in that sampradaya by association of devotees. And as mentioned, I was reading some time ago that Narad Muni is a common thread between all the sampradayas. He goes and he's gone and given his association. It's very, very important, because Prabhupada does emphasize this, that actually to reach the highest perfection of spirituality, Narayana Smriti, one needs, how does he put it? This is only possible by the association of a pure devotee who can give finishing touch to the transcendental activities of jnana, yoga and karma. So it's very difficult to understand everything. Even it is said that when one is very advanced devotee on the level of Mahabhava, even the beginning levels of Krishna Prema, to enter into the very intimate pastimes of the Lord, one needs to develop a very intense level of prema. And so, to show mercy to those devotees who have risen to such high platforms, it is said that the Lord, sometimes after they leave this world, they are given an opportunity to again come and be involved in the Leela of the Supreme Personality of God. In other words, when Krishna descends in different times, he performs so much pastimes. And there are many liberated souls that come with Krishna, and there are others who are reborn and given an opportunity to also involve themselves in those leelas, and by that very intimate association with the Lord and his very, very advanced devotees, they rise up to the very, very finishing platform that they're able to enter directly into very intimate pastimes with the Supreme Personality. This is a very, very important thing. Sadhu Sangha Sava Shashtakaya Lava Mantra Sadhu Sangha Sava Siddhi Hoy. It is mentioned that just by a lava mantra, lava is defined as 1/11 of a second. Even by 1/11 of a second of association with a very, very great devotee can give one Sava Siddhi Hoy, can give one Siddhi with perfection. Can give just a moment's association by seeing, by hearing, by serving, anyway. But even a moment, that association is so powerful. Now, the Yogendras are very famous for instructing, you'll find in the 11th canto, they're very famous for instructing Maharaj Nimi, who himself was a Vaishnava, and he was conducting a big yajna, and all very great elevated personalities were there, and they had come upon there, the Yogendras, and they had come there and they were very effulgent, they were like glowing in their effulgence, and Maharaj Nimi was very overwhelmed and ecstatic to have them come to his yajna. So he got down from, normally the king sits on his throne, but he got down and paid his obeisance and welcomed it. And then he took advantage of their presence by asking them a series of questions. So these Yogendras, Kavi, Pipila, they're actually the 9 Yogendras, and they answered one after the other. In other words, Kavi started, he asked one, and Kavi started, and then the next one gave an answer, and the next one gave an answer to the next question like that. And it went, in this 11th canto, you can read this, it goes over 3 chapters actually. And then after they had finished their discourse, they were there, and all of a sudden they just disappeared. While everyone was looking, and they were there, and then they were gone. This is how powerful they are. They just travel around. Actually, it is mentioned that they can travel anywhere. Sometimes they just go naked, just like it is said the Kumaras go naked. They don't care. They're just totally detached from the world or any aspect of it. They're situated in transcendence. They're even, there's one description of Kadama Muni when Swayambhu Manu came to see him. He was speaking, Swayambhu Manu was speaking to him, and Kadama Muni was answering, and then in between answering, he would just stop and he would go into a blissful situation. And Prabhupada actually mentions that yes, this is a position of very, very great devotees. They're just always in bliss. Param Drishtva, they have a higher taste. And here Prabhupada actually mentions that those who are actually fixed devotees, they're not interested in other things. They're satisfied totally in Krishna consciousness. And I told the story of that Mr. Lou Gottfried, who drove Prabhupada up to that Morning Star Ranch, that on the way up there Prabhupada was going up it was like a beetle bug or something like that, and they were going. Mr. Lou had this big ranch, and many people were living. It was kind of in the hippie era, so it was like a commune, so many people. He decided to take Prabhupada up and do a program there with Prabhupada, so he picked him up, and he was talking about all the different paths and this and that and the other, and Prabhupada listened for a while, and then he interrupted. He said, Mr. Lou, he said, when one has achieved his perfection, then all other things are superfluous. So when one has actually reached that state of satisfaction, that paramita, the higher taste, then they're full in themselves. You can't, just like when you eat a big feast, you get full. You just can't eat anymore. Even if someone came along, you want a few more gulabs? How about this? You want more sweet rice? A bit more halva? Oh, no, I can't. I'm full. Just fully satisfied. I can't have another thing. So the devotees who are actually very elevated devotees, they're like that. They're just satisfied in their own, and it's such a high level. But any other path, whether it's through the Varnashram system here, it's talking about Svadharma, your specific duties in Varnashram, Varnashramat Charabhata Purushena Parabhaman Vishnu Adarite Panta Nanya Tattachakaranam. The perfection of Varnashram is coming to the point of understanding Lord Vishnu. And whether it's jnana, just like the Kumaras were jnanis, and the Yogendras were yogis, but they came to the point of Narayana Shmiti, Narayan at the end. So it's very important that at the end of our lives, if we can think spiritual, if we can think of Lord Narayan, if we can think of Krishna, but just leaving it to the end, you have to be a practitioner through your whole, because anything can happen at the end. Just like parrot. The parrot can be taught certain things, but if something happens, there's a squawk. So who knows what's going to happen? So best to practice it your whole life, and then whatever you've been practicing your whole life, very naturally you'll be thinking of that thing. Just like I was reading a story. There was an accident, and someone was the passenger, but they were a trained paramedic, and so they said that the accident happened. They happened to be in the car, and they just went into, when there was some injury to the others, they just went automatically into paramedic mode. Right? They knew exactly what to do. They didn't have to even think of it, just second nature. Why? Because they've been trained. Many years of training, continuous training, and they were still in it. Now, it's one thing to have training, but then maybe go away for a long time. Of course, the training will always be there. But if you go away for a long time, then you start to forget things. You start getting rusty. You start making mistakes. So, you have to be, sharp. And to be always sharp, you have to be always doing it. And it comes second nature. Just like the construction. Just like we see here is the construction of houses, this, that, and the other thing. So, sometimes we can try to do something. All of us experience this. We try to do something, and it takes us forever. We just can't get it right, and things break and fall apart. But those who are trained, the tradesmen come in, and it's quick, because they're doing it all the time. They just know what to do, and they just do it. And they go away, and you're scratching your head. Yeah, that's how you do it. Because they're always doing it. So in spiritual life, if we're always doing it, then whatever it is, at the end of our life, at the start of our life, in the middle of our life, wherever it is, we're just in that mode. It's very, very important. So Prabhupada does make a point of that. that one must mould their life. In other words, life should be moulded in such a manner that one is able to progressively remember the personality of God in every step of life. He emphasizes again twice in the episode. Mould it progressively and at every step. So at every step. So this is what Prabhupada has given. We all know how he left India and left Vrindavan, came to the Western world and set up programs and so on and so forth, and how to actively be actively engaged in spiritual life, in Krishna consciousness. Always be thinking how to do something in Krishna consciousness. One time I remember Prabhupada says, don't be lazy. Always be thinking of how to do something in Krishna consciousness. There's so many things to be done and can be done. So if we're thinking like that, take guidance. And sadhu sangha, very, very important. Sadhu sangha. Lord Chaitanya said two things: the chanting, Mahamantra, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and sadhu sangha. These two things are very, very important for spiritual advancement. So always keep the sadhu sangha. Hare Krishna, I'll read this verse again. Edhavan sankya yogabhyam svadama parinishtaya janmalabha parapumsam anti narayana smriti. The highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by the perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of God at the end of life. Any questions or comments?
Could you please explain what you just said,
Sadhu Sangha?
That is?
Yeah, Sadhu Sangha. Sangha means association, and Sadhu means the sadhus, the sages, the devotees who are practicing spiritual life. Sadhu Sangha, Sava Shastrakaya. Sava Shastrakaya. They know, they realize, they know all the different instructions. Sava Shastrakaya, Lava Matra. Even Lava Matra means even a moment of their association. Sava Siddhi means perfection. So Sadhu Sangha, get the association of the spirituals, of the devotees. You just a moment of it, you ultimately reach perfection. Very good question, thank you. Yes, Prabhu, one final question.
Just one line I saw pop up, what's quite astonishing, where you said the devotee can give the finishing touch to the transcendental activities of jnanis, yogis and karmis. So what does that actually mean, to give the finishing touch? It means that they stop performing their activities in fact?
Well, the finishing, because that Narayana Smriti is the ultimate. So they're going along and practicing, they're being jnanis or yogis, and they attain certain level of maybe Brahman or the yoga perfections. But the finishing touch is when that is all comes together at the point of Narayana Smriti. Then that's the finishing touch. I did mention about the finishing touch even for devotees who are very advanced, that Krishna gives them an opportunity to take part in his Leela. But for the jnanis and the yogis and the karmis, the finishing touch, so during, a karmi is those who follow the Karmakanda section of the Veda. So then one is elevated through the Svadharmas and so on and so forth. But then ultimately, if you come to the Narayana Smriti, that's the finishing touch. And those things are only good if actually the finishing touch is there. Just like there's, we have our short-term goals and medium-term, but if there's no ultimate goal, then it you just kind of wander around because everything can change. But if you establish what your ultimate goal is, then very nicely you can go ahead through your life. So the yogis they can only elevate up to a certain level of perfection or so on and so forth, and the jnanis only up to a certain point, and the karmis. But when there's Narayan, the finishing touch, then they can go to the topmost of perfection. that Narayana Smriti. That is what is meant here by the finishing touch, that he is the finish. Just add Krishna. Whatever you're doing, add Krishna. Prabhupada used to say it like that, very simply. Just put Krishna in the center. And at the moment, we've got ourselves in the center of everything. One time he said like that. He said, what is this Krishna consciousness? It's a very simple thing. He said that instead of I and me in the middle of everything, put Krishna there. And then if Krishna is there, then everything, just like everything comes out like concentric circles. Because Krishna is, everything emanates. So if you put Krishna there, then all your endeavours will achieve perfection. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.